Alright guys, well at the end of the first video I just about finished making this box for my table saw, and I've now put it all together and I've made myself a handle, and as pointed out by one of my subscribers, Turbo Conquering Mega Eagle, he said you're going to be doing a lot of winding because of the position of the conrod on this bar, and he's not wrong. 86 turns from bottom to top, and he suggested adding an electric motor, which is a sensible idea, or I thought I might add a secondary wheel with like a gear on it, so for every time I turn it once, it turns this 5 or 6 times, which will look pretty cool, but it's a lot of messing about. I think I might stick with the motor. I don't know, that's all for future. Today what I'm going to be doing is making some trunnions. Now trunnions I explained a little bit in the first video, but if you didn't see that, let me show you again. Trunnions are basically a two-piece rotating hinge. One of the pieces has a slot cut into it that acts like a track, and the other piece has a raised section which runs along inside that track. When you fit them together, there's no gap like I've drawn it here. I've just drawn it like this to make it a little bit more clear. The advantage of having trunnions is because they're semicircle shape. If you fit the centre of that circle on line with the top surface of the table, of the cutting table, it means that the pivot point of the blade will be on the top surface of that table. And that means that the groove that you have to cut for the saw is as small as possible. If you fitted the hinge or the pivot point lower down, it would mean that your blade would move like this, and that would mean that you've got to have a big gap in the table, which is no good for anybody. So that's why we make trunnions. So today I'm going to attempt to make some trunnions out of this wood. It's the first time I've ever done it, don't know what it's going to be like. Let's get on with it. And now, after a little bit of trimming and deburring the edges, perfect fit. It's too smooth to spin. I'll do that after, if I can get it out. Oh no. Wow, that is a good fit. I'm really pleased with that. Now that these two pieces fit together absolutely perfectly, what I've got to do is cut them. So to do that, we know that the centre is the pivot point, and this is the thickness of the table. The pivot point has to be exactly on top of the table. So what I do is line it all up. Oops. Line it all up. Centre of the pivot point on top of the table. And then draw a line. And that's where I have to cut it. Turn it over and do exactly the same for the other side, making sure the two lines are parallel. So once I've cut these two lines now, this piece can sit on the bottom of the table and this piece is for the other side. I always forget to plug it in. Now I just have to sand these down to the line and then I can cut the inner piece. And now that these two pieces have been cut and sanded and they line up absolutely perfectly, just get that on there. Look at that. Oh, I'm dead pleased with that. Proper pleased with that. It's turned out nice. So now what I've got to do is I've got to cut this piece. I've got to draw a line, same as before, the thickness of the table below the pivot point. But when I get to the halfway line, when I get to the pivot point, broke my pencil. No! Never mind. Luckily I've got a drawer full. Once I get to the centre line, I need to come down at 45 degrees. I'm a dozy bugger. And now I can draw the line below, right up to the 45 degree line. And this is where I have to cut it, not this one. That was just to get me 45 degrees. The cut line is across here and down here. So let's get that done. Now I can sand that up, draw around it and make the other one just the same. I finished making two of the smaller pieces. I've cut them to 45 degrees and these now fit inside the big section and it's a nice smooth rotation. These small pieces now, they get fitted onto the box somewhere around here. I'll measure it next time. I'm not doing it now. These will get fitted onto there, and then the big ones will get fitted onto the underside of the table, and when this locates into here, the whole box will pivot. Before I fit the trunnions, I've had to make a small adjustment to how the saw is fixed in position. Originally, I was using just the original pivoting bracket, but I realised that there was a slight amount of play in this, I mean a really small amount of play in this bracket. And what that did, it meant that the saw was ever so slightly loose, and the blade had about 0.5 millimetre movement, and I didn't like that. So what I've done is I've made another bracket and I've attached it to the body of the saw, so now it's absolutely solid. There's no movement in it whatsoever, except for up and down. There's no left and right movement. So now I'm happy with that. I can fit the trunnions. Now, like I said earlier on, the positioning of the trunnions depends on where the blade's situated. It's got to be right in the centre of the blade. I'll just mark this on both ends. I'll mark it on this side as well. So there's the thickness of the blade on both ends. And now I have to line up the trunnions with the centre of the blade. The thickness of the work surface is the same thickness as this board, and the trunnions have to sit below the work surface. So by putting them directly on level with the top of this box, that's the perfect position for them. Well, that's my trunnions all fitted. I just have to wait for the glue to dry now. And while I'm doing that, I'll think about the next bit. I haven't really thought about that yet. I'll get it though. Catch you next time.